We'll continue on with recording 6, starting with our talk about the nervous system. The nervous system is pretty much the most complex organ in the body. It consists of only 2 major structures, which is the brain, spinal cord, and then you have all of the nerves that come off of your spinal cord. It's divided into 2 major portions. You have your central nervous system, which is the brain and spinal cord, and then you have your peripheral nervous system, which is everything outside of that. So your central nervous system, brain, spinal cord, peripheral nervous system, this is everything outside of that connects the body into the brain so that they can talk. Your peripheral nervous system is divided into 2 additional sections. You have your sensory division, which receives information from the outside world through touch, sight, taste, smell, all of your senses, and then directs that up to your spinal cord and then finally into your brain for interpretation. And then the other portion of your peripheral nervous system, the motor division, has your body respond to those sensory signals that you get. Your motor division helps move your muscles, helps stimulate glands to release hormones, which cause changes throughout your body. It's further divided into 2 nervous systems. So you've got your somatic nervous system. This is the part that you can voluntarily control. So your skeletal muscles are part of that somatic, because if you choose to pick up the pen, your arm is going to move, your fingers, everything's going to move in coordination for you to be able to pick up that pen. Now, sometimes we act really without thinking about it. Those are reflexes. It's still a voluntary muscles. Then you have that autonomic nervous system, which we were just talking about with circulatory system control. So this autonomic is more automatic. It happens without you actually thinking about it. The sympathetic division is that fight or flight when you're in an emergency type situation and your body is preparing to respond. Even if there isn't a true emergency, your body may perceive that there is. And then your parasympathetic controls the non-emergency functions, the rest and digest portion of that. For your central nervous system, your brain is the overall control for your body. There's a couple of major subdivisions of the brain. You have your cerebrum, which is the largest part of the brain. There's 4 lobes, and each is responsible for specific functions, such as hearing, balance, speech, and controls the activities on the opposite side of the body. So the right side of the brain controls the left side of the body. The left side of the brain controls the right side of the body. Your cerebellum coordinates your body movements. So those people that are very uncoordinated, you could blame this on their cerebellum if you wanted to. The brainstem comprises 3 different areas. You have your midbrain, your pons, and then your medulla oblongata. The spinal cord is just an extension of the brain. It's made up pretty similarly. It's just not as specified. And its whole goal is to transmit messages between the body and the brain in both directions. Around your brain and around your spinal cord, you have a fluid called cerebral spinal fluid, also known as CSF, which cushions, protects, brings nutrients and whatnot into both of those structures. Here's kind of what it looks like. When we talked earlier about the skeletal system, I talked about the fact that the spinal cord ends well before the sacrum. So you can see the sacrum here in this representation. You can even see a little bit of the tailbone or the coccyx. The bulk of the spinal cord ends well below, or well above that, And then you have this section, which is just long spinal nerve fibers called the cauda equina, also known as the horse's tail. But the majority of the spinal cord runs from the base of your brain, where it connects into the brain stem, and then runs a good portion of your back. Your peripheral nervous system divided into two main portions, your somatic nervous system, which is stuff that you can actually physically control, and then the autonomic nervous system, which is more those automatic functions that you really don't have to think about. It just kind of happens. Your somatic nervous system transmits signals from the brain to voluntary muscles, or those skeletal muscles, which allows for walking, talking, writing, basically everything that we do to move around on a daily basis. Your autonomic nervous system is your involuntary nervous system. This controls actions that are necessary for basic body function. So breathing is definitely one of those. Wouldn't it be exhausting to have to remember to breathe every couple of seconds? Your body just does that. You really don't have to think about it. Now, can you increase your respiratory rate voluntarily? Yeah, but you have to think about it. It's not just a natural thing that happens if there's no real physiologic reason for that to happen. This is further split into two areas. You've got your sympathetic and then your parasympathetic, which we've talked about a couple of times now. Two different types of nerve within the peripheral. You've got your sensory nerves that carry information from the body to your CNS, or central nervous system, so into your spine and then up to your brain. This is gathering information about the outside world. And then your motor nerves carry information from your central nervous system out to your muscles to respond to whatever that stimulus was. Each muscle in the body has its own motor nerve, so there are a lot of them. And those signals get carried down into the muscle, which cause it to contract. That's the basic response to any sort of motor nerve. Your integumentary system, or your skin system, has two different layers. So you have two layers of skin. You have the epidermis, which is superficial, so closer to the surface. That's the stuff that you actually see. And then you have your dermis, which is deeper. If you look at the two words to keep them in something you can understand, epi means on top of. So on top of the dermis is the epidermis, and then the dermis itself is your reference point. Underneath your skin, you have a subcutaneous layer as well. Subcutaneous is essentially fat. It ends up insulating the body, and you keep energy stored there as well. You also have sweat glands, which produce sweat for cooling the body. You have sebaceous glands, which secrete sebum. It's a waterproofing type substance. It also softens the skin, because if you've ever noticed, if your skin gets really dry, it ends up cracking. It gets brittle. That makes you more susceptible to illness, because now you have a way for things to get into your body that shouldn't be there. So your body does try to keep your skin relatively soft so that it doesn't crack. You also have hair follicles. These are very small organs, essentially, that produce hair. You have blood vessels that provide nutrients and oxygen to the skin. And then you have a special type of skin called a mucous membrane. This covers your bodily orifices, such as your mouth, your nose, and then also the vagina of the female. This is a protective barrier that's very similar to skin. It secretes mucus or a watery substance that kind of lubricates, because obviously we have a lot of things that come into our mouth, such as food, and we want to make sure that things are lubricated so that you don't injure yourself. Mucous membranes are meant to be moist, where skin is meant to be dry. So the sebum that is put onto your skin to waterproof it, you don't get a lot of that in your mucous membranes. Your skin is the largest single organ in the body. So yes, your skin is an organ in and of itself. It has three major functions: to protect the body in the environment, basically to provide a physical barrier against your internal organs, your internal body system from the outside world, just trying to keep you safe. Regulates body temperature, and then also transmit information from the environment to the brain. All of your sensory neurons or sensory nerves are located within your skin. And that's how you transmit up. There are some others around your body, but the majority of them are coming out to your skin. In cold environment, what happens is the blood vessels in the skin constrict to try and bring body into to bring blood into the body, taking it away from the surface of the skin. You end up losing heat through blood. So if it's close to the surface of the skin and the surface of the skin is super cold, it's actually going to start cooling down your body. So instead, you end up bringing it closer to the core to protect it, keep it warm. The exact opposite is that in a warm environment, your blood vessels end up dilating, your skin becomes flushed, which is why you get red when you exercise, and then heat ends up radiating from the body surface because you have more of it there. You also have sweat glands that secrete sweat, which is basically water and salt in the most simplest form. It puts that on the skin surface to cool, and then that evaporates. You have to have both the sweating and the evaporation for temperature to be controlled through that mechanism. And we will go ahead and stop here and continue on in the next.